Welcome to the deep dive. We're tackling a concept today that sounds, well, pretty extreme, maybe even a little bit sci-fi. But our sources argue it's actually a very useful tool for understanding where the economy is heading. We're talking about AI feudalism.
Right.
When most people think about AI, it's usually about the tools, the cool interfaces, or maybe, the anxiety around jobs being replaced. But we're going deeper. We're asking, who owns the engine? Who really owns the infrastructure? And how does that change everything?
It's fascinating because I think we've all sort of normalized the idea that AI is like a public good.
Like electricity or the internet.
Exactly, something that's just available. But the reality, when you really dig into the source material, is vastly different. The most powerful AI systems, the ones that are going to truly reshape how we work, they're not open source. They're certainly not running on your laptop.
Yep.
They live inside these massively expensive proprietary stacks. We're talking huge pools of data. The models themselves, the best chips, all controlled by, what, a handful of global companies? Yeah. The hyperscalers.
And that concentration of power is what matters. Because in any system, right, ownership shapes the outcomes.
It's everything.
So if a tiny group owns the means of production for intelligence itself, what happens to everyone else?
Well, that's the mission today, isn't it? To follow that thread. Because if a few players own the productive engine of this new era, then everyone else becomes dependent. Dependent on access, not on opportunity.
And that's where the analogy kicks in.
That's it. In this admittedly uncomfortable analogy, the land is intelligence at scale. And the rent, well, the rent is paid in money, in your data, your attention, and crucially, your compliance with their rules.
Okay, let's set the stage for that. Let's go back. Traditional feudalism.
Yeah.
It was all about the land, right? A lord owned the land, which was the means of production.
The only means of production that matter for most people.
Exactly. So if you didn't own land,
Yeah.
you couldn't really survive on your own. You were tied to the landlord. Your mobility, your power to negotiate, it was all incredibly limited.
Right. And modern economies were supposed to fix that. They replaced that control with, wages, property rights, labor markets, things that gave people mobility.
The relationship changed from a tenant and lord to an employee and employer. Still unequal, but you could, in theory, leave and find a better job.
You had options. You had some agency.
So how did the digital age start to reverse that? I mean, the internet was supposed to be the great democratizer.
It was at first. But then the digital era gave us platforms. These companies, they didn't own the factories, but they owned the rails everything ran on. Think early Google or Facebook.
They sat in the middle.
Precisely. They sat between the people creating things and the people consuming things, and they took a cut. They mediated distribution.
So they didn't write the article, but they controlled who saw it, and they could charge for that access.
Exactly. But here's the critical shift, and this is what AI does. It moves from mediating distribution to mediating capability. This is the whole game.
Okay, unpack that. Capability.
An advanced AI system isn't just showing you a link. It's writing your business plan. It's designing your product, coding your software. It's doing the productive work itself.
So if I'm getting this right, platforms control where you sold your stuff, but AI systems control whether you can even make competitive stuff in the first place.
That's it. That's the leap. If these core intelligence capabilities are owned by just a few companies, they're not just mediating markets anymore, they are mediating work itself. Your ability to do your job or run your company now depends on access to a tool only 3 companies in the world can provide.
That's dependency.
That's dependency.
And this is where the analogy gets really sharp. Our source material lays out 3 specific features, like the actual mechanics of this new power structure.
Yeah.
Let's start with the first one, which is about the relationship itself.
Right. The first feature is this shift away from buying a product you own, like, buying software on a CD in the 90s.
You buy it once, it's yours.
It's yours. This shifts to a subscription. You're subscribing to an always-on, always updating capability that is always under the control of the provider.
So if they can change it, or limit it, or just take it away, you're not an owner anymore. What does the source material call that relationship?
It calls it tenancy. You are a tenant, not an owner. You are perpetually reliant on access, which means you're reliant on the owner's goodwill. The rules, the price, what you can and can't do with it, that's all set by them, unilaterally.
You're renting the ability to be productive.
And that lease can be updated at any moment. And it's not just individuals, right? It's whole industries being built on these foundation models. They're also tenants.
building their castles on rented land?
Absolutely. Think of a developer who relies on an API from a big language model. If that provider changes the price or the model's quality degrades, their entire business can be wiped out overnight. They have no control over their own means of production.
Okay, so access is permission. That's feature one. What's the cost of that permission? That gets us to the second feature, right? The economics of it all.
Rent seeking, that's the second feature. As AI becomes the engine of productivity, the thing you need to compete, then the fees you pay for it, they stop being just a software cost.
They're not discretionary anymore.
Not at all. They effectively become a tax on doing business. When you're paying for API calls per token, and you need millions of them to run your business, and only one or two companies can provide that service, the fee they charge is pure economic rent.
It's not just profit from competitive market, it's extraction. Because you have no other choice.
Precisely. The value just flows upwards constantly to the people who control the stack. The system is designed to capture value at the point of access.
Yeah.
It's a structural siphon, pulling productivity away from the people doing the work and toward the owners of the infrastructure.
So that's the economic trap.
Wow.
But what about the societal one? The sources seem to suggest the biggest danger might actually be social. This is feature 3, compensation as a substitute for agency.
Yeah, this is the one that really gives me pause, because it sounds like a solution on the surface.
You mean things like universal basic income?
Exactly. UBI, AI dividends. We know jobs will be disrupted, so we talk about these ideas to make sure people can still buy things. Now, that might be necessary. But there's a deep, deep trap here.
The trap being?
Well,
If the owners say, look, we'll automate most of the jobs, but we'll pay you all a stipend from the profits, that seems to solve the immediate problem.
it solves a consumption problem, yes. But the trade-off is agency. You transition from being a participant in the economy to being a recipient, a dependent.
So you get paid enough not to cause trouble, basically. But you have no say. No say in how the system is designed or governed.
A stipend can absolutely mask the pain. It can reduce material suffering. But in doing so, it cements the dependency. It makes it permanent. The underlying power imbalance doesn't just remain, it gets stronger.
And we have to talk about the cultural side of this, too. Work isn't just a paycheck. For a lot of people, it's identity, a sense of purpose, of being needed.
That is the heart of the agency question. A society that just replaces active contribution with a passive allowance. It risks becoming, and this is from the material, resentful, fragmented, and easy to manipulate. If people feel they are surplus to requirements, even if they're getting a check, that is a recipe for social breakdown.
Okay, so if this is the direction we're drifting in, towards this kind of dependency, what's the answer? It can't be stopping innovation.
No, of course not. The answer has to be insisting on modern principles, on policies that prevent this kind of permanent structural dependency from taking root.
So actual intervention.
It has to be. The first area is the economic structure itself. We need to talk about competition policy.
But traditional antitrust was about, breaking up a steel company. Here, the power comes from data moats and algorithms. It's different.
It's very different. You can't just break up a company. The policy has to be smarter. It has to treat AI infrastructure and these data advantages as strategic national challenges. Maybe that means mandating interoperability or forcing some data to be shared so that intelligence isn't locked in a proprietary silo forever.
So you're trying to prevent the monopoly from hardening into, well, a fiefdom.
That's the goal. Then the second area is about trust. Transparency and accountability.
Because right now, these systems are black boxes.
Total black boxes. If an AI denies you a loan or flags you for a job, you have no idea why. We need clear accountability when these systems cause harm. We need to be able to interrogate the logic. If you can't question the system that governs your life, you have no agency.
It's the modern version of the Lord has made his decision.
And that's not acceptable. Finally, we have to talk about the fuel, the data.
Data right.
We need strong ones. Right now, as users, we are the unpaid fuel for private empires. Our data is just extracted, and it reinforces the advantage of the very few companies who already have all the power.
We need to stop that siphon.
We need to give people genuine control and maybe even a stake in the value their data creates. Without that, the gap just becomes unbridgeable.
The sources are really clear on this point. If the future is sold to people as, you'll get an allowance while a few firms own everything productive, that deal will eventually be rejected. It's just not stable.
No. The healthier goal, the only one that really works in a modern society, is participation. People need to be able to build and adapt and own a piece of the value in this new economy, not just be tenants who consume the outputs. So when you connect all these dots, the real danger of AI isn't just that it might replace some jobs. That's a huge deal, of course. But the deeper danger is that it could replace our bargaining power with permanent dependency
Right. Turning us all into renters of intelligence.
instead of owners of opportunity.
So the question isn't whether AI will create wealth. It will. I mean, immense wealth. The real fight, the one you should be thinking about, is who will own the engine? Who sets the rules? And will ordinary people feel like they still have a stake in the world they're helping to build? We have to fight for agency just as hard as we fight for income, something for you to explore further.